Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to my channel. Bit of a surprise. Yes, I have seen Godzilla vs. Kong. Review for that's coming soon. I want to watch it at least one or two more times before I do review it. Short answer, though, it's awesome. But I already had previous engagements. Today, I will be without any guests, as I was really hoping I would have a guest for this video, but no. Today, I will be reviewing another one of my favorite both Schwarzenegger movies and movies of all time in general, with 1987's Predator. Simple title. I'm not going to do this with this mask on. And yes, I am aware that's the mask from Alien vs. Predator, but a review for that will be coming as well. So yes, indeed. So I ain't gonna lie, reviewing Commando with Shawnee Boy got me in an Arnold mood, and it made me look back on my channel, and I realized my original Predator reviews kind of suck. Then again, I think a lot of my videos back when I was living at my grandparents kind of suck. So and also, yeah, doing Commando, like I said, got me into an Arnold mood, so I decided to give this one a look. I'm glad that I did. So Predator is a very personal movie to myself. It's technically not the first of... Did they ever do those comics? I know for some reason they did Batman versus Predator. But did they ever do Terminator versus Predator? Predator is a very personal film for myself. It's not the first of the whole series that I ever saw, but I think of the whole Predator franchise, this is definitely the one that I've seen the very most. With a possible... It's kind of debatable because I've watched Predator 2 a lot as well. And, okay, so Terminator versus Predator, I don't think that would be a good concept. RoboCop versus Predator, yes, but Terminator, no. That'd be cool, but nah, it doesn't sound that interesting. I remember seeing this for the very first time when I was very young. I saw it on AMC. That was back in the day when AMC was a really cool channel, and all of October they would just be showing nothing but horror movies. And of course, I managed to watch a few minutes of this. It was Carl Weathers' character getting his arm shot off and getting impaled on the Predator's wrist blades. I just remember that really kind of freaked me out, but admittedly, this movie never really scared me. But it always, stuck in my head because that was the first time I'd ever seen someone's arm get shot off by a laser cannon. So it always stuck in my head. Then, of course, when I got older and I became more of an Arnold Schwarzenegger fan, I discovered that, oh, yeah, this is one of his movies as well. So, again, back in the days of Blockbuster, I decided to rent this movie against my mom's wishes because for the longest time, my mom was really against me watching horror movies because she didn't like horror movies and didn't want me to watch them either. But you know how that goes. You try to keep your kids, keep your kids from doing something, just makes them want to do it even more. So of course I watched the shit out of this movie. This and Predator 2, I watched the living shit out of, and I just loved these movies so much. And I still do to this day. Rewatched this a couple days after I watched Commando. This movie still holds up. And it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. It's one of my favorite films of all time. It kickstarts one of my favorite franchises of all time, as admittedly kind of short as it is. It's also definitely and easily my top 5 favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. Surprisingly, though, Predator was released initially to very negative reviews, which kind of surprises me, but I also can sort of see why. Mostly just due to the fact that this movie's story is very, very, very simple, which isn't a bad thing by any means. This, again, only 2 years after Commando, that movie's story is fairly straightforward as well, and it has pretty positive reviews. So, why is it that Predator, which isn't story wise similar, but visually is kind of similar to Commando, so why did Predator get reviews or bad reviews? But it has been reevaluated, and everyone now considers it to be one of the best 80s action movies of all time, myself included. I absolutely adore this movie. Yet another 80s action classic from Schwarzenegger. Is there a crossover movie you hope or dream that would happen? I would love to see a Godzilla and Ultraman team up movie. Not a versus movie, but a team up movie. All right. So, with all that being said, real quick, I want to talk about the production of this movie. So, the production for um okay, so the production for Predator, specifically because this movie was actually shot in the jungle. Um let's see, where was this movie shot? Principal photography eventually began in the jungles of Palenque, Mexico, near Villahermosa, Tabasco, during the last week of March 1986, but most of the film was shot in uh, Mismalo, Mismaloya, Mexico. And much of the material dealing with the jungle was completed in just a few short weeks. And both the director um or the producers Joel Silver and um some guy named Gordon were pleased by the dailies provided by the director John McTiernan, whom I don't think he has done a whole lot of movies, at least none to my knowledge. Oh, he also directed Die Hard. Okay, never mind. And he also did Hunt for Red October and Last Action Hero. This guy must like action movies. Um, On Friday, April 25th, production was halted for a few days so Schwarzenegger could marry his then wife, Maria Shriver, and have a very short 3-day long honeymoon so that the second unit uh, could complete additional lensing. Production resumed and ended in late June of 1986. What was rough, both McTiernan and Schwarzenegger lost 25 pounds during the filming of this movie. Schwarzenegger's weight loss was a professional choice. However, unfortunately, McTiernan lost all this weight because he avoided the food in Mexico due to health concerns. Unlike McTiernan, however, most of the cast and crew suffered from traveler's diarrhea since the Mexican hotel in which they were living in had problems with its water purification. Basically, low key, they were suffering from dysentery. In an interview, Carl Weathers said the actors would secretly wake up as early as 3 a.m. to work out before the day's shooting. And Weathers also stated that he would act as if his physique was naturally given to him and would work out only after the other actors were nowhere to be seen. What? Schwarzenegger, though, said that filming was physically demanding. He had gym equipment shipped to Mexico and he trained intensively every day before shooting began, of course, usually with his co stars. Jim Thomas, who's a screenwriter, was impressed with his training regimen and said, "I think that phrase 'manly men' was coined during the production of Predator." Among other tasks, Schwarzenegger had to swim in extremely cold water and spent 3 weeks covered in mud for the climax of the movie. In addition, cast and crew endured very cold temperatures at night that required heat lamps to be on at all times. The cast and crew filmed on rough terrain that, according to the actor, was never flat, always on a hill. We stood all day long on a hill, one leg down and one leg up. Arnold also faced the challenge of working with Kevin Peter Hall, who could not see in the Predator suit. He recalled that when he's supposed to slap me around and stay far from my face, all of a sudden, whap! There is his hands with claws on it. Kevin Peter Hall stated in an interview that his experience on the film wasn't a movie, it was a survival story for all of us. In the scene where the Predator chases Dutch, the water was foul, stagnant, and full of leeches. Kevin Peter Hall could not see out of his mask and had to rehearse his scenes with it off and memorize where everything was. The outfit, of course, being very difficult to wear because it was heavy and affected his balance. I wouldn't really say that the production was terrible, but it definitely was a bit of a difficult um, shoot due purely just to the rough terrain. Though it seemed like all the actors did have a good time filming the movie and working with each other. How would you feel if the Avengers and the Justice League had a live action crossover? I'm anti Marvel now, so I don't really care anymore. So let's get into the plot of Predator, shall we? A spacecraft flies near Earth and releases an object which enters the atmosphere. Sometime later, on a Central American beach, Alan Dutch Schaefer, played of course by Arnold Schwarzenegger, being a retired Vietnam era war veteran, now being a mercenary, and the rest of his team, Pancho, played by Richard Chavez, Billy, played by Sonny Landham, who apparently was a former porn star and crazy. Mac, played by Jesse Ventura. No, that's Blaine. Excuse me. Yeah, Blaine is played by Jesse Ventura. Mac, played by Bill Duke from Commando. And Hawkins, played by Shane Black, are tasked by Dutch's former commanding officer, General Phillips, with rescuing a foreign cabinet minister and his aide held hostage by Central American insurgents. CIA officer Dylan, an old friend of Dutch's from the Vietnam War, played by Carl Weathers, aka Apollo from the Rocky movies, is assigned to accompany the team over Dutch's objections. The team discovers the wreckage of a helicopter and 3 skinned corpses, identified by Dutch as Green Berets out of Fort Bragg, one of them being named Jim Hopper, that he knew personally. Dutch's team reaches the enemy camp and kills all the guerrillas, including some Soviet intelligence officers, because 1980s Cold War stuff. Confronted by Dutch, Dylan admits the mission was a setup to retrieve intelligence from captured operatives and that the dead Green Berets disappeared weeks earlier in a failed rescue attempt. After capturing Anna, played by Elpidia Carrillo, the only surviving guerrilla, the team proceeds to its extraction point, unaware that they are being tracked with thermal imaging by an unseen observer. Anna escapes and is chased by Hawkins, but they are ambushed by a cloaked creature. It spares Anna, but kills Hawkins and drags his body away. I'm assuming he was disemboweled. I can never really figure out what happened to Hawkins, but I think he was disemboweled. Dutch organizes a search for Hawkins' body, during which the creature kills Blaine by shooting him with its plasma caster and just burning a hole in his chest. Enraged, Mac initiates a firefight that wounds the creature, revealing luminescent green blood, which I'm pretty sure was just, at least at night, was just glow stick fluid. The unit regroups and realizes that something in the jungle is stalking them. Dylan believes more gorillas are responsible, but Billy is adamant that the perpetrator is not human, with assertion that is met with skepticism. Or an assertion that is met with skepticism. The team makes camp for the night, setting traps in all directions. They, of course, are set off that night, and Mac ends up killing a wild pig, not through gunfire, but by sticking it with a giant knife, mistaking it for the monster. In the confusion, the creature steals Blaine's body, and Dutch realizes that their enemy is using the trees to travel, making their traps ineffective. A second attempt to capture the creature using a net momentarily succeeds, but it escapes easily, leaving Poncho injured by having a giant tree trunk smash into the motherfucker and send him flying. Mac and Dylan try to pursue the creature, but it outmaneuvers and kills them both. The creature then catches up with the others, killing Billy and Poncho, but wounding Dutch in the process. Realizing the creature does not target unarmed prey because there is quote-unquote no sport, Dutch sends Anna to the helicopter unarmed. The creature pursues Dutch into a river and moves within a few feet of a mud-covered Dutch. His thermal signature reduced, Dutch remains unseen by the creature, and it moves on. And this leads Dutch to realize that he can use mud as camouflage. While the creature collects trophies from the dead soldiers, Dutch crafts traps and weapons and lures the creature to him. He disables its cloaking device and inflicts minor injuries, but falls into the water, losing his mud, and the creature subdues Dutch and wishes to fight him on equal terms, discarding its plasma caster and taking off its mask, revealing its face to Dutch, leading to the iconic Arnold line, "You're one ugly motherfucker." And engages Dutch in hand-to-hand combat. Dutch gets the living shit beaten out of him, but he manages to crush the creature under a trap's counterweight, which at least had to be a 400-pound log. Just goes splat. As the creature lies dying, Dutch then asks the question, "What the hell are you?" To which the creature replies back to him the same question, and then activates a self-destruct device and begins laughing madly with Billy's voice, revealing that the predator species can mimic other people's voices. Realizing what the creature has done, Dutch runs from it as quickly as he can. He manages to take cover just before the device explodes into a small nuclear explosion, and he is later rescued, battered, beaten, and bruised by Phillips and Anna with a chopper, thus ending the film. So how about this plot? Well, it's a nice twist on... Excuse me. It's a nice twist on the 80s action movie formula, which is how this movie initially would have started off as, though the spaceship flying by at the very beginning kind of gives it away. But if you were to miss that and then watch the first act of this movie, you'd be forgiven for mistaking this for just being another 80s action movie with Arnold in it. But then, about a third into the film, the movie switches gears, and you now realize, oh, this is a sci-fi action horror movie. Well, horror movie, quote unquote. Again, this movie never really scared me as a kid. Part 2 kind of did, but I'll get to that whenever I talk about part 2. Um, so yeah, it's a good inversion of the '80s action movie cliche, but it's when it is just an '80s action movie, this movie is absolutely stellar. But then when it switches gears and moves into a cat and mouse monster on the loose um, film, it still does succeed uh, beautifully, and it doesn't feel like Sister Two syndrome. I do feel like it was very intentional that the director started this movie out just as an '80s action movie and then slowly introduced the sci-fi alien horror elements, and they don't feel shoved in at the last minute. It feels very deliberate and very intentional, and it works seamlessly in my opinion. So with all that being said, let's get into the pros and cons of the original Predator. Pro number one is, of course, once again, Arnold himself. I feel like he does bring a lot of that larger than life personality and persona that um, he exuded in Commando. Though here he's a bit more of a stern badass rather than just being a someone who knows he's badass, but he's just trying to be low key. But he's then just forced to become the ultimate unstoppable juggernaut. Here, Arnold's character just embraces his badass nature. Hell, one of the first, and you know that Arnold is here to not fuck around because one of the first scenes when he first meets Dylan, of course, leads to this. Dylan, you son of a bitch. And you just see both Arnold and Carl Weathers' sweaty, oily, very muscular arms getting into an arm wrestling contest. Um, it just, yeah, I would agree with the director that probably the phrase manly men was coined in this movie. There's not a single, well, except for General Phillips, there's not a single male actor in this movie that is not at least, maybe not like a bodybuilder, but they're very, very muscular. And that's one thing. Oh, I'll say that for a minute. But the Arnold overall is just, he's a total badass in this movie. He's very fun to watch. He's just a badass former military guy who is embracing his life as a mercenary. Um, He's a total badass. He's fun to watch. He gives no shits gunning down gorillas. And you also get to see Arnold get a lot more frustrated and angry in this movie, which beforehand, well, with Terminator, he was just playing a robot. But beforehand, with Commando, he was a loving father who was still a badass. Here, he's the angry, stern, no nonsense badass. And it's like a lot of people like to say that Arnold can't act worth a shit. I don't think that's true in the slightest. I think that's a load of bullshit. Um, but yeah, Arnold in this movie is a total badass. Pro number two is the rest of the cast in this movie is overall very, very solid. The least of which being Shane Black. He doesn't do that much in this movie. Um, I think he's a much better director and writer than he is an actor. The only other movie that I've seen him in was RoboCop 3 for a brief moment in the beginning of that movie. He's not bad here, but he just has First to Die written all over him. But he's all right. Let's see. And one thing I respect a lot about this movie is that, with the except, I don't think Kevin Peter Hall, the guy who played the Predator, was in the military, but every single member of the main cast was at some point uh, in some kind of branch of military, except for Arnold. Um, I think Carl Weathers served in Vietnam. Um, Bill Duke, I also believe, was in Vietnam. Richard Chavez, he, I believe, was in the Special Forces. Jesse Ventura was a former Special Forces guy. Sonny Landham, I believe he might have been in the military, but again, he was also A porn star? And a crazy dude? Oh, he's dead. Damn, really? Yeah, he was a porn star. He was in Play. He was in Playgirl. Damn, this dude did not like Arabians. Yeah, this dude was crazy. Okay, I don't think he was in the military, but a lot of the actors in this movie were prior military. So I'm sure a lot of the gunplay and the military tactics in this movie was just like clockwork to them. So I'm sure it made this movie a lot easier for them to do. But the rest of them, um, all their acting is really good. Poncho, he's the grenade dude. He's kind of the smartass of the group. Um, Jesse Ventura as Blaine, he's the big hulking juggernaut, even more so than Arnold. Um, Mac, he's just kind of like another light, heavy gunner. Um, but he also has some explosive knowledge. Billy is the tracker of the group, which makes him valuable. Um, Dylan's just kind of there to be along for the ride, but he still helps out a lot. Um, yeah, everyone has really, really good chemistry, and you can definitely tell that this group has spent a lot of time together because their chemistry is totally pure. And one thing I want to talk about, I don't know if this was intentional or if this is just people making a mountain out of a molehill, but upon my most recent viewing, the relationship between Mac and Blaine came off being a bit gay. Like it, not necessarily homoerotic, but when after Blaine is killed, the way Mac acts towards Blaine's corpse, well, that sounds a little weird. Like how he reacts to his death comes off as a grieving best friend, but also as a grieving secret lover. Especially when Arnold says to Mac, he was a good soldier. And then Mac goes, he was my friend. And the way that Arnold looks at Mac, it's like he's saying, wait, really? You too? I don't know if it was intentional. It may just be people making a mountain out of a molehill, but if you watch the movie, it does kind of seem like Mac and Blaine were a bit gay for each other. Again, like I said, it could just be people making mouse out of or mountain out of a molehill. But if you watch it, I think it is there. Um, but yeah, everyone's chemistry is really good. Everyone acts like they were an actual special forces team. Their chemistry is good. How they work together is very convincing. You definitely buy these guys as a band of mercenaries, and they're fun to watch. And their acting is good too. There's really no bad acting in this movie. There's a couple moments where, Arnold gives his like get to the chopper. That became a meme, of course, but there's no bad acting in this movie, I wouldn't say. Pro number 3 is the pacing of this movie is pitch perfect. There's never a scene that drags. There's never a scene that feels forced. For a movie being only an hour and 47 minutes, yeah, 47 minutes, nary a scene is wasted. Everything feels important. Everything feels essential. Everything feels critical. Critical. Um, this movie is paced perfectly. I would definitely say it's very cinematically paced. It never drags. It never goes by too quick. Everything feels important. And you're just there to just along for the ride. Pro number 4 is the cinematography of this movie is really gorgeous, and at that same time, it can also be very creepy. And this is how it's done with, although not necessarily the thermovision, but there's a lot of shots in this movie where the camera's trying to tell you that, mostly with Billy and kind of Anna a little bit too, um, where you get the sense that you're being watched. I may as well talk about this too. Pro number 5 is, while this movie I don't think is scary, I think that this is a very weak horror film, but the suspense is pretty sound. There are a lot of moments where it mostly just has to do with the fear of being stalked and being watched that, fucks with a lot of people, kind of myself included. So if you put yourself in the shoes of these guys, they're in the middle of a jungle in the middle of buttfuck nowhere, and there may or may not be some kind of alien monster out there hunting them down one by one. It can get under your skin. And also the sensation of being in a forest that you're not familiar with in the middle of the night, pitch ass black darkness, it can be freaky. But the suspense and the cinematography go hand in hand in assisting each other. But aside from that, the rest of the cinematography of this movie is really gorgeous. There's a lot of wide open shots of the jungle, but also the making it feel claustrophobic and confined in this dense jungle does help for the film's suspense. Of course, the action scenes are well shot too, and the whole movie, just in general, is very well shot. Yeah, really good cinematography and really good suspense. Again, it plays on that fear of being stalked and being watched. Mostly it has to do with Billy. You know that something is acting up as soon as Billy, like when he has his over the top laughing bout, he stops, he turns around, then he just runs back into the jungle. Another one of my favorite suspense moments. This leads to a admittedly good jump scare. This never got me, but anyone who's never seen this movie, I'm sure it would be a jump scare. Um, when they set up all their traps, Dutch and the rest of his team like kind of lay in wait for the predator to jump into the net. Nothing comes out, so he decides to use himself as bait. He like creeps forward, almost snags on a tripwire, has his gun pointed out, and he stops. He turns around, flang! There goes the net. The suspense and the jump scare there is really, really solid. Let's see. Pro number 6 is the music for this movie is overall very, 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 very good. Not much to say about it. It was done by Alan Silvestri, who is kind of a bit of a lesser known, really famous. And no, he's been nominated for 2 Academy Awards and a Golden Globe Award, and he has won 3 Saturn Awards and 2 Emmy Awards. Why didn't he do Age of Ultron? He's done a lot of really famous movies over the years, of course, but you just don't hear people talk about Alan Silvestri as much. He did Back to the Future, all 3 movies, Forrest Gump, Lilo and Stitch, Polar Express, a lot of the MCU movies, including every single Avengers movie except for Age of Ultron for some reason. And of course, he did Predator. I don't know if he did 2. Let's see. Oh, he's doing the new Disney. Or Disney, yeah, totally. The new Pinocchio. Damn, he really is a Disney sellout. Okay, he did do Predator 2. Okay. But yeah, the music to this movie is overall very, very, very solid. Of course, this movie does have its own iconic theme, which is nice. But the rest of it is kind of just almost not generic, but kind of standard 80s action movie music. It's when the movie transitions into a sci-fi horror movie when the music becomes more distinct and a bit more creepy, and it's good in building tension and building suspense, but also accentuating all the action scenes and the jump scares. It's really, really good. Not a whole bunch to say about it other than yeah, it's good. It's great music. The well, no, the Alien series has iconic music as well, but I would definitely say the Predator franchise has more iconic music than the Alien series. Um, Pro number 7 is the action scenes in this movie are absolutely awesome. The gorilla fight is awesome. Like I could rewatch that scene. I probably have in the past like 10 or 15 times in a row and it never gets old for me. Watching Arnold and his team just mow everyone the fuck down with MP5s, M16s, grenade launchers, and a fucking minigun. Oh my god, it's so fucking fun to watch. And watching Jesse Ventura just unleash this giant fucking minigun, which admittedly unrealistically shoots down a whole bunch of people, they would just get in real life, they would just be shredded to pieces. But it's still so fucking fun, so entertaining, and so awesome to watch. Um, yeah, all the gunplay in the first really big action scene in this movie is fucking stellar. The shootout after Blaine is killed, where they just mow down at least 3 or 4 square acres of forest with all their guns, is fun to watch. Even though they're shooting at nothing, just watching them unload all their guns is very fun. Um, the setup montage and the attempt to capture the predator is very entertaining. And then this will lead me into pro number 8. The entire third act of this movie is fucking awesome. The whole movie is pretty much kind of like a cat and mouse game. It's a bit like Diet Terminator, a little bit. Not in a bad way by any means, but it's similar to Terminator. But the entire third act is one big giant cat and mouse game. Arnold being the mouse this time and the predator being the cat. Watching Arnold try his best to outwit this creature using various traps and weapons to try to take it out, it's very well done, very convincing, and very well executed, and of course, very entertaining. Um, and of course, one of the most iconic Arnold Schwarzenegger moments is when Arnold shows up slathered in mud, lights a torch, and he lets out this giant scream and lights this giant pile of wood on fire. It's one of Arnold's best moments in his entire career. Um, Again, it's pretty much just him saying, "Bring it on, bitch." So yeah, it's really fun to watch. Though I have one big issue with the third act, still, the third act is very, very entertaining. And finally, pro number 9 is the special effects. With one exception, the special effects overall are very, very, very good and very well done. Some of the best practical special effects in any movie. It rivals the Alien series, and I think in some ways surpasses it. Um, the blood and gore and explosions are fucking top notch. This movie had a pretty decent budget, having a 15 to 18 million dollar budget, which almost twice as much as Commando. It uses it very, very, very well. The explosions look great. They probably saved a whole shit ton of money by doing actual location shooting, though I'm sure the gorilla compound was an actual set. I'm pretty sure they didn't just find that in the middle of the jungle. But the rest of the movie is pretty much location shooting, um, which is nice to save money. So all the explosions look really good. And the gore and blood look absolutely stellar. When Blaine is shot with the plasma caster, which is a Predator's laser cannon, the aftermath of him being shot, it looks so nasty. He's got this giant burned, cauterized, gaping hole in his chest. His ribs are exposed. You can see his lungs, his muscle, and his burnt flesh. It looks nasty and gross. Um, let's see. When Billy gets his spine and skull ripped out, like you see Billy's corpse with blood all over his face. Predator just digs his fingers into Billy's back, and you hear this really nasty, fleshy cracking sound as he tears his spine out. And when he drops the skull, it's slathered in goblets of meat and thick blood running all over it. Oh, it's nasty. Um, when Dylan gets his arm shot off, it's not a clean cut. It looks very ragged and bloody and torn. Um, it's stellar. The blood and gore in this movie is absolutely stellar. The explosions look really good. And of course, not to mention the creature effects. The suit for this species is known as the Yautja, or the jungle hunter, as this one's been named. The suit looks very, very solid. Retroactively, it makes sense, but still, one issue I have with the Yautja in this movie is like he has too few weapons, but it's not much of a big complaint because Predator 2 rectifies that, but here it makes sense because this was just a simple hunting spree. He only wanted two weapons: his plasma caster and his wrist blades. But still, I think he has a little too few weapons, but 2 rectifies that. Yeah, the creature effects are stellar. It's kind of an easy monster to pull off. There's nothing too like this monster is not a xenomorph. It's just a very humanoid, but still like reptilian slash alien looking alien. But it's very easy to monster pull off. It's just shaped like a human. Just has clawed hands, reptilian, oily, patchy skin, dreadlocks, and of course the most alien element of this monster is its face, which the creature effects were done by Stan Winston, of course, who also previously worked with Schwarzenegger on the Terminator. The animatronic mandibles on the Yautja's face are very well done. They don't look like animatronics. It just looks like an alien. It looks like a real living creature. They move well. It sounds really good. It looks really good. Yeah, pretty sure those were actually Kevin Peter Hall's eyes. Which, fun fact, he actually was 7'2", a full foot taller than Arnold. So the height difference is very noticeable on screen. Overall, the creature effects are very, very, very well done. It doesn't look like a suit. It looks like just a living, breathing creature. Doesn't look like a guy in a suit. The effects, except for one thing, it's not a huge issue, but still is noticeable. Other than that, the effects are stellar. So with all that being said, let's get into, do I have any cons? I have 2 this time instead of 1. But I'll talk about the first one. Probably my biggest issue with this movie. I do have it's not really a nitpick, but I will agree. This movie's story is very, very simple. But kind of like with Commando, it's just one of those simple, escapist, entertaining stories. It's not trying to go out and rewrite film history. It's not trying to go out here and give you some ham-fisted, the first purge, anti-Trump political message that ruins so many movies nowadays. It's just trying to be here to be an entertaining 80s action sci-fi alien gore movie, and it succeeds. But the story is pretty simple, not a bad thing per se, but coming off of Commando, this can feel just a tad bit similar. But my biggest problem with this movie is the final fight between the Yautja and Arnold. I'm okay. I would have been okay with him getting his ass kicked, but my main issue is that this fight, it's more one-sided than Batman versus Superman in Batman versus Superman. The Jungle Hunter beats the ever-living shit out of Dutch, and it's kind of disappointing to see Dutch being built up as this ultimate big badass throughout the film, and then in the end of it, he so easily gets his ass kicked. Once again, retroactively, it does make sense because the Yautja species, at their barest minimum, are 5 times as strong as the most physically fit human, kind of like Captain America. But still, you could have played up kind of a bit of a King Kong versus Godzilla type thing with the Yautja being the big giant juggernaut and Dutch being trained in military hand-to-hand combat would have been the more agile speedster and get a few good hits in. One thing also is that I wish Dutch held onto his knife, and especially in mercenaries and special forces, the knife is one of the most valuable tools that they teach you to use. Because it's always there. Your gun can run out of ammo, but your knife will always be there, and it'll never, never, ever run out of ammo. So I wish that Dutch could have held onto his knife and get kind of his ass kicked, but I would have preferred if Dutch got some good hits into the Jungle Hunter, like slice open one of his legs, break one or two of his mandibles, maybe bust an eye socket, and just give it some bruises and maybe a broken rib or two. But Dutch gets his ass kicked way too easily and way too much in this final fight. It's almost sad. Like whenever I watch this movie, watching Dutch get his ass kicked so easily, it's just again almost kind of sad. My other con with this movie, this isn't a big one, but upon my most recent viewing, I do have to admit the invisibility effects in this movie are definitely dated. They don't look terrible. There's only one shot where the invisibility effects actually do work as they call it active camouflage. That hurt. It's the scene where after the jungle hunter kills Mac when it's stalking Dylan, Dylan is scanning with his gun around the jungle, and there's a shot where it goes past a patch of forest. You can, if you're looking, see the jungle hunter like standing a bit diagonally on a branch. If you're not paying attention, you can miss it. Only up until the camera focuses in on it when you're like, okay, there he is. But other than that, a lot of the invisibility effects, what kind of kills it for me is how slowly the Yautja moves when it's invisible. Like in the rest of the Predator franchise, they move, normally throughout the landscape. But here, the Yautja moves kind of slowly, like it's the $6 million man. Like two shots that always stuck out to me. After it escapes the net, it kind of like slowly leaps onto a branch. And then there's another one right after that where it like grabs onto another branch and like swings itself around with its legs. It moves so slowly. It's like they meant to shoot it in fast motion, but they forgot they left it on slow-mo. And they just put it in the movie in slow-mo. So that really always stuck out to me like a sore thumb. It's not it's not absolutely terrible. It's not some of the worst effects I've ever seen. And this also is the first time they were doing something like this, and this is the first of the franchise. But they definitely didn't stick the landing with the invisibility effects with this movie. That's really the only weak element in the effects. Other than that, they're stellar. That's all I have to say. Predator is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's one of my favorite Arnold movies, and if you are a big Arnold fan and a big sci-fi fan, definitely do check this movie out. And also, if you're a big 80s action movie fan, check this movie out. I give it a perfect solid gold 10 out of 10. Highly recommend it. Absolutely love it. One of my favorite movies of all time, and one of my favorite Arnold movies, of course. So go out, post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. And as always, go outside, grab yourself a big Bowie knife, and have yourself a good hunt. And I will see you guys in the next video.